Welcome to episode 13 of the Art of Life podcast. This is my third take. I'm having some technical difficulties, but that's life, baby. It was meant to be. We talked about burnt toast in prior episodes. I can't believe we're 13 episodes in, 13 weeks. We started this podcast in November of 2023. It is now midway through February 2024. And I think each week I'm getting a little bit better. Each week I'm getting more comfortable on the mic, upgrading my systems. Actually, this is the first week I should be available on YouTube. Although based on the technical difficulties, it might not. But knock on wood, it's going to be available on YouTube, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. But if you guys want to watch my pretty face while you hear me talk about my life or my opinions or my thoughts, you're more than welcome to now. And let's get started. What are we talking about this week? This week is going to be an autobiographical podcast because I love autobiographical works. Within the last year, I read David Goggins, Hicks and Gracie, Matthew McConaughey. And one of the reasons I love autobiographical works or biographical works is to understand, I think most amazing people have had really challenging lives, right? You can't go through hell without being forged. And I think also they allow me to see that's something about their life that I really like, or that's something about their life that I really don't like. Or that's a lesson that, hey, I watched them make that mistake. I don't want to make that mistake, as I think we all kind of do in our day-to-day lives. But autobiographical gives you kind of the insight to how they're thinking. And that's something I really enjoy. So this week, I'm going to talk to you about my health journey. So whether you know it or not, if you know me personally, you probably know this. If you don't, I've had 2 liver transplants. That's right, 2 liver transplants. I live with Crohn's, which is an autoimmune disease of my digestive system. For me, it's mostly in my intestines, as well as some other health things. And I'm just going to tell you guys the whole journey around it and the lessons I learned. I'm going to try to make this as compact as possible. This is a long story, and there's a lot of unnecessary details. When it's like a personal story, there's things you want to share. But basically, I was a really overweight kid. I was weird. I'm still super weird, but now, more socially acceptably weird. And didn't have a ton of friends, found comfort in food, was super overweight. Around 12, 13 years old, I started getting interested in girls and recognizing that, hey, I'm not treated the same as my peers because I'm overweight. And so started, training. And I was already doing martial arts, but started lifting weights. My dad had a good friend of his, shout out to Walter, who owned a gym and was a personal trainer and a bodybuilder. And he wrote me my first program, which I still remember. It was a 3-day split. It was chest, back, and shoulders. No, chest, back, and shoulders, then arms and legs. It was a 2-day split. And I worked the plan, He taught me all the exercises in his basement gym. And I don't even know how I got a gym membership, because I was 13 years old. But the gym was one of the first places I felt like I fit in. It was somewhere I could show up. And when you see a 13-year-old kid at the gym, all the guys that were pretty serious about fitness would all dap me up. And I was almost 190 pounds at that age. So I was moving serious weight, because weight moves weight. And so that was my first interest in fitness. And I had a pretty crazy transformation, because one thing people don't realize about puberty, and I've taught teenagers and kids in martial arts, is boys, when you go through puberty, your testosterone skyrockets. And when people do steroids, something you might not realize is most of what they're injecting is testosterone, or at least a testosterone base, because that is the hormone that helps you grow muscles. The hormone that helps you eat is the hormone that, provides everything. So I had a pretty wild body transformation from grade 8 to grade 9, grade 9 to grade 10. And I think it was grade 9. It was exam season. I had noticed, I'm starting to care about my looks, because, that's why I'm going to the gym. And I started noticing that my eyes were kind of yellow, which was, to me kind of weird. And I remember Googling it, WebMD, and I'm 13. And when you Google yellow eyes on WebMD, it's scary. All these cancers, liver failure, all this shit. And I was I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. There's no way. And, scrolling through pages, you find all kinds of stuff. That's why you're not supposed to Google your own ailments, especially when you're young. If babies have too much beta carotene, so if babies have too many carrots, their eyes will turn orange. And I used to have at least 1 banana a day. So I was it's definitely the banana. And I was also, right, dead giveaway in hindsight, I used to have bags under my eyes. And something about bags under your eyes, I would buy this caffeine roller, I think it was by Garnier, to try and hide the poofiness under my eyes. And so I thought maybe one of those two things. So I cut those out and kept training, and started feeling like I fit in, started understanding more social cues, started making more friends. Life was good. And my jaundice, or my yellow eyes, which is a sign of like some kind of liver issue, would come and go. But exam season, first semester, grade 9, we like in my high school it was spent like we had 4 classes, and you'd have your exams split out randomly throughout a week. And my exams felt like 2 exams Monday, Tuesday. So then I had the rest of the week off. And because I was like pulling all nighter studying, I wasn't a very good student, so I was like trying to catch up on work. My lack of sleep made that jaundice like stay. Like my eyes were really yellow. And my mom was just, being a good mom, and she's just like, this is not normal. We're going to the doctors. I'm forcing you to go to the doctors. Which I went. I didn't want to, but I went. And the doctor was like, yeah, this is not good. Did blood work, and my liver enzymes were off the chart. The doctor's like, I don't know what's happening, but something's seriously wrong. We need to get him to a specialist. And, my parents were worrying, whoever will see us first. We ended up at a hospital in Hamilton. And the first thing they do at the hospital is like kick out your parents, come with a social worker, and ask you all kinds of questions. And I remember like this is the first time I ever got accused of being on steroids. Like, hey, are you taking something to lose weight, or diet pills, or steroids, or we need to know because something's happening right now and it's serious. And I was like, no, man, like I'm 13. And they're like, oh, are you doing drugs? Are you having sex? Are you having gay sex? What they're supposed to do to because kids won't talk in front of their parents. I'm like, nah, man, like I'm just a normal kid. I still like Pokemon, and I like lifting weights. They did blood work, and that's when they're like, okay, we got to figure out what's wrong because your liver enzymes are really bad, and this is a sign that something is going on. Based on like what you've told us, based on your symptoms, we think it's very likely that you have gallbladder stones. The gallbladder is a part of your liver that releases bile into your digestive system. I'm not sure if it's your intestines, and helps you digest fat and fat-soluble vitamins. But when you lose weight really quickly, what can happen, people get gallbladder stones in general, but you can get gallbladder stones. So the bile turns into a stone and it blocks your bile ducts. It blocks your gallbladder. Did an ultrasound, wasn't that. They're like, there's not really anything else it could be. You're young and healthy. You're not doing drugs. Maybe it's sludge. So like when all the bile starts to solidify, they did another ultrasound. It wasn't that. Then they diagnosed me with autoimmune hepatitis. They started treating that, and the symptoms weren't really going away. And I remember I was being transferred to hospitals, and my doctor was going on paternity leave because his wife couldn't get maternity leave. She was a professional musician. And he looked at me, treated me like an adult, which I always really respected about our medical system. He's like, I don't know if I want to do this because it's the right move or because I'm nervous that I'm leaving you. But I want to do a liver biopsy, which is like a giant needle that's going to take some pieces of your liver so we can get some answers. And they did that. The copper level in my liver was so high that they thought it was a rare genetic disease called Wilson's disease. I remember they asked my parents if they might be related. And I don't know if you're watching this on video. If you can see, I'm half Chinese, half French Canadian. So my parents are definitely not related. But, started treating that. Those medications are really expensive and really hard side effects. And I was being transferred to hospitals from McMaster to Sick Kids in Toronto. And so they were seeing me like as they could. So I went there early in the morning, and I was just a teenager. So like didn't eat, rolled out of bed. Went to the hospital. I'm like, oh, my stomach kind of hurts, but didn't think anything of it. I'm just like, I'm probably just hungry. I'll eat after this, whatever. Meet with the doctor. Everything's fine. That night, I'm in immense pain, like immense pain. We rushed back to emerge. I was having a spasm in my colon. These things happen. Your colon's a muscle. And so they sent me home. Within 24 hours, I was back in the hospital, and I was having acute pancreatitis. So like something was going on in my pancreas. I couldn't eat food. I was super nauseous. I'm like, all right, you're staying here. We're going to figure out what's going on before we let you out of the hospital because this is getting weird. Mind you, the amount of time that progressed through all this was like grade 9 to grade 11. And by grade 11, I remember it was I was the most excited in my life for that year, that school year. I was in really good shape. I had good friends. I was excited about the prospects. I had just won the elections, so I was Minister of Culture, so responsible for like music and theater activities because, that was that kid in high school. And I remember we had our first pep rally on Halloween Day. I dressed up as Edward Cullen from Twilight because I was all the rage. And I was kind of doing it as a troll, but it looked like I was a fan. Anyways, it was just a really cool day. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is going to be the best year of my life. And this was 2009. So November 4th was my last day of school. So after that, I stayed in the hospital. They did what's called an ERCP. So they sent a camera down your throat all the way to your liver. And I got diagnosed with the correct diagnosis, which was primary sclerosing cholangitis, or short PSC. And it's a rare genetic disease where your immune system attacks the bile ducts in your liver. It's typically diagnosed in middle-aged men of Northern European descent. I didn't really fit the profile, but from what the doctor said and from what the internet said, typically once you're diagnosed, you don't drink, you do yearly blood work, you take care of your health and you do some medicine, and there's no cure, but if it doesn't progress, you can live a very normal life. If it does progress, liver transplant is the only solution. Now, so I'm like, okay, whatever. And I was getting sicker and sicker. And I remember they were talking about me being assessed for transplant. And so in my head, I was like, this is 10 years down the line. They just want to see my health markers. I don't know. I was young. My family too, no one thought anything of it. So that was March 2010. Yeah, March 2010. And I'm being assessed for transplant, and just a 2-day thing to make sure you're healthy enough to have a transplant. And I met the surgeon on the first day, and he walked into the room. It was me, my parents, my brother, and he's like, you're an adult. I'm going to talk to you like you're an adult. I'm not going to hold you any punches. He's like, you're dying. You have 6 months to live, and you need a liver transplant. You need one now. You don't have time to wait for an organ donor. You're not going to survive. You need to find, if you want to live, you need to find someone that's willing to give you half of their liver. Which was crazy, because going into that assessment, I didn't realize how ill I was. I knew how bad I felt. I knew I wasn't really in school. And I guess in hindsight, talking about the story, you kind of realize I was kind of ignorant. But, when you're in it, you're in it. You don't really see the forest for the trees, or whatever the expression is. So I remember that I think back in my life, that was the moment where I became a man, because I remember the expression on my parents' face and my brother's face. And I remember thinking, there's still things I haven't done. I was doing alternative medicine. There's still things that can be done. I don't know if I want this. And I remember I looked at my parents and I was like, okay, I need to really think. I don't really want to talk about this right now. Can you we'll talk about it tonight when we get home, but right now I need to sit and think. And that's what I did. And I really thought about, hey, what's my life going to be like post-transplant? Because you're trading one set of problems for another set of problems. And ultimately, the sicker I got, I decided to list myself. I was super lucky. My dad was a match. So it was supposed to be my first year of grade 12. September 7th, 2010. Supposed to be my first year, my first day of grade 12. It was the first day I was eligible. I wanted to go do my driver's license, my G2, so my second, of the 3 tiers of driver license you can have in Ontario. I was having my liver removed and a piece of my dad's put in its place. And that was really totally life-changing. By that point, I was so sick, I couldn't keep my wrist up. I couldn't keep my wrist straight, I would always perpetually be like this. I was my skin was just peeling. I looked like a lizard that was shedding, My hair was like hay. I was itchy all the time. I was bright yellow. I looked like I belonged in The Simpsons. My eyes were bright yellow. I didn't sleep. I couldn't really eat. I was in pain all the time. And I woke up in the ICU with that liver, half of that liver, and I felt amazing. It was like magic. All of a sudden, my skin was getting better. My hair was getting better. My dad's in another hospital, and he went from being in the best shape of his life because he got prepared for the surgery to, getting cut in half and missing, for all intents and purposes, 2/3 of his liver. And so he's going through a horrible time, and I'm going through the scar hurts, but I feel amazing. And from there, did the rehab, finished off high school, and a dream of mine would always be to go to China to train. And so I decided, I had planned the gym I was training at was going to China. So I worked my martial arts teacher told me, he's like, if you can get healthy enough, we'll go. And so we did. I did. And so 1 year after my transplant, and which is crazy because right before I was supposed to leave to China, I started having like a rejection, and the doctor's like, "Man, you can't go." And I was like crying. The nurse practitioner's crying. They're like, "We have to get this kid to China. What are we gonna do?" Did some experimental drug that happened to work fantastically for what was going on. And 24 hours before I was supposed to get on the plane, at 17 years old, the doctors gave me the okay. And so I went to China for 36 days. Life was good. I graduated high school. I was doing things I wanted to do. My health was like not amazing, but like so much better in comparison. But I still had these like lingering health issues. And came China was a trip of a lifetime, life-changing trip. Went and trained with monks, lived out there. 36 days. When you're 17, that's long as fuck. Came back, went to university, and when I was in university, I just got really sick again. I was having infections in my liver. I was having crazy high fevers, like 40-degree fevers, 39-degree fevers. And like I remember like feeling my body want to have seizures in my dorm and just being like, like a year after going to the hospital, being told that, the disease had returned. It was the quickest medically recorded reoccurrence of PSE. And that's, they can't do a live donor twice, at least not at the time. It had never been done. They had speculated ways of doing it, but they didn't, so I got relisted for transplant. I had to drop out of university. And that was really difficult because I had gone through all this really difficult stuff with the promise of a somewhat normal life. And to get sick again so quick was just so hard, like emotionally, mentally, on everything I was dealing with. But it's also life. And, I managed. I was then waiting, you're just waiting. You're doing the best that you can. I trained when I could, but my health was like quickly declining. There were good weeks, there were bad weeks, there were good days, there were bad days. And then October 2nd, 2013, I finally got the call. They had a liver for me. And then I had a second life-saving liver transplant. And everything's not been, rainbows and butterflies, but that one went really smoothly. Actually, when they explanted my old liver, they had said, so something I forgot to mention earlier. When I first got that new liver, my dad gave me, I was like determined as fuck, annoyingly so when I was young. And I was like, okay, I'm going to beat the record for the quickest discharge from the hospital. I think it was like 9 days. They're like, man, he's going to do it. He's going to make 7 days. And it was like 4 or 5 days in, and I just got so sick, crazy fever. And I was really rejecting the liver to the point where like I was almost going to lose it, which is like a dire situation because then they got to find you a liver no matter what, or you're going to die, right? And at that point, they're like, well, if we can't save this liver, we'll give you a liver that's like HIV positive. We'll give you whatever it takes to keep you alive. And like, that's obviously not what I want. Luckily for me, we were able to manage the rejection. But when they took the liver out, they're like, hey, there's reoccurrence of PSC in this liver, but there's also a lot of evidence of like damage from rejection. And during that first transplant, that first liver, I rejected that liver a ton. You go through what's called like acute rejection. So you'll be living and you start having a fever and feeling unwell. And they always do a biopsy to make sure, like, because if you have an infection, they have to load you with antibiotics and boost your immune system. But if you're rejecting, they have to do the opposite. They have to kill your immune system so it stops attacking your new liver, because that liver doesn't belong to me, right? It used to be my father's, so my body's like, what is this weird thing? And that's why a lot of patients, every patient who's at a transplant is on immunosuppression, because your body doesn't, there's like an organ inside you that doesn't belong to your body. Your body's like, what is happening? It wants to attack this foreign object. And so it was a journey, and it's still a journey. People want to know about the scar, now you know. What I learned along the way, being told you have 6 months to live at 16 years old was just how short life was. There's a lot of things that happened along the way. Like I had right after I got my second liver, there was a dear friend of mine waiting for a liver as well, who passed away waiting. And that was like a super hard thing where it's like, man, like I get to go on and live life, and she doesn't. And she was like the same disease, same situations I was in. That was a really difficult thing to process. And thinking about, like my life will never be normal. I will always need to be on medication. I will always deal with the side effects of the medication. And that's like when people are like, you're so positive. How are you? Like, that's why I'm so positive. Because like, there's so many ways along the line where like things could have been so bad. And I'm alive. I'm here. I could sit here and be like, woe is me, boo hoo, I can't, I gotta take meds. Or I can just be like, man, this is the card I was dealt. This is what's cool. I'm still fucking alive, and maybe my life won't be long. So what am I gonna do, right? Because I recently saw something on TikTok that was just like, it was like compilation of like motivational shit. 'Cause I love that stuff. It's like you get 75 years. 75 years as an adult, realistically, statistically, like that's 75 summers. You know, like, and I'm so determined to use my time because statistically speaking, and like granted, statistics are based on averages, and I'm not average based on there's just the medical things I've been able to accomplish. Right? Like my doctors all the time tell me this. So we don't know how you do anything that you do. Like you should be on disability. Like patients that have half the complications that you do not have the energy to do the things you do. Like you're a high level athlete and you're doing all these things. Like, and I truly, truly believe the fact that it happened to me when I was so young, it became my normal to feel unwell. The fact that it happened to me when I was so young, I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was still thirsty to live life. There's so many things I wanted to experience. And so I think like the biggest lesson I learned is that, don't waste time, appreciate what you have. And like, no matter what cards you're dealt in this life, there are ways to play it. There are ways to play it. And there are people who are far worse off than me, or people that I am far worse off than. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Comparison is the thief of all joy. Like you're listening to this, you have challenges in your life. You have things you had to overcome. You have decisions you had to make. But when you fight as hard for your life as I did, you refuse to settle. And that is like the best gift I can say. Like I'm 30 now. I just turned 30 pretty recently. And I've lived an incredible life in those 30 years. And a lot of them were ill. Well, I'm still ill, but like a lot of them were like bedridden, right? So when you wonder like why I do the things I do, why I make the decisions I make, it's because I value so, so deeply time, connection, experience. Because if you really think about that number, it's terrifying, right? As an adult, and statistically, right? Like I don't know how much longer I have to live. I could, at any moment, this illness can come back. At any moment, we could all get hit by a truck. Also, get hit by a van. A rare pandemic can break out and kill you. Like anything can happen. And so, what I hope you get from my story is the power of a positive outlook. The power of positive outlook. I've really condensed this down a lot. There's a lot of things I left out. That's why some of the story might seem a little bit rocky and like misplaced. I do like I'll write a book one day about it, But right now, I shared what I think was important. I shared like what you don't have to suffer the way I did to learn the lessons that I have. Life is short, ladies and gentlemen. And taking big risks and doing big things with people you love and connecting. If your life is miserable for any kind of reason that you can control and get out of, do it. Okay? Because if you were to find out that you were going to die a year from today, would you still settle for the next year that's planned in your life? Because you might, actually, statistically speaking, someone listening to this will. Right? So what I can say from my knowledge, from my experience is, it's so fucking cheesy, but sometimes you just need to hear it. Like whatever is not working for you in your life, whatever you want to try it, but you're scared to look stupid. Like none of that matters. Just go out and do the things you want to do. Life is so, so short, and life is cut short for many of us. And with that, our first YouTube podcast. So you guys have videos of me talking as well. Wherever you're listening, please rate the show 5 stars, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, leave a comment. I appreciate that so much. It helps me grow. It helps me get my message out to more people. And as always, if you listen to the podcast, shoot me a message. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like. Let me know what you guys want to talk about next. I'm thinking in the next couple weeks doing a Ask Me Anything episode. I think that would be a really cool. And as always, signing off with a quote. This is Epicurus. Death is, then I am not. Epicurus wrote it to a letter to Monoceus. So my mom just bought me the Daily Stoic. So it's like I love those daily books because they're like one page. It forced me to read a little bit, but it's something to ponder. So Epicurus wrote, "Accustom yourselves to believe that death is of no concern to us, since all good and all evil lie in sensation, and sensation ends with death. Why would I fear death but cannot exist at the same time that I do?" Now that last part was a little bit made up by me because I wrote the quote, but I realized I'm missing a huge chunk of it. So, but that was like my favorite thing. He said, "As long as we exist, death is not here. If I am, then death is not." Like, why would I be afraid of something that can't be in this world while I am in this world? Right? It's like, it's pretty out there thinking, but if it makes you less scared of death, like, I don't remember anything about what it was like before I was in this world. Why would I be afraid of what it's going to be like when I leave? All I can control is what's intangible and around me. And that's the quote I'm leaving you guys today. Thank you guys for tuning in. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. And have a great, great week. I will see you guys next week. Cheers.